Hello and welcome to Just Jets episode number 151. What is going on? I am Matt O'Leary hanging out with you for this lovely episode. The 2022 season has come to a close, so now I'm going to be answering the biggest questions that the New York Jets are facing this offseason, because stop me if you've heard this one before. It's a big offseason for the New York Jets. They have a lot of questions to answer. We'll get into those. I'll talk about something I heard that I didn't really like about Zach Wilson and Mike LaFleur, and we'll get into your voicemails. But before all of that, a word from our sponsors. 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year. From our friends over at Manscaped, the ball has officially dropped, but that doesn't mean that you have to drop the ball on your balls in 2023. You get what I'm saying? Whether you had a New Year's kiss or not, the leaders in below the waist grooming have you covered for your much needed resolution of bringing sexy back. Join the 7 million men worldwide, 7 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our exclusive offer. Go to manscaped.com and use my code JETS20 for 20% off and free shipping. That's right, JETS20 gets you 20% off and free shipping from Manscaped. Let us have a toast for a new year and a new you, and a new you with no pubes. Manscaped. I love it. Let's hop into today's episode. We have a lot to get into, including the biggest question marks the Jets have to answer this offseason going into 2023. I'm sad that the 2022 season is over. They finished 7-10, which, like, fast forward, if you take a jump back to August before the season started, and someone from the future came to you and said the Jets finished 7-10 this year, I would have said, yeah, that checks out. I predicted them to win 7 or 8 games. I'm pretty sure the final one I ended up sitting on was 8-9. Just missed the mark there. But the frustrating thing is we know how it finished. They limped to the finish line. 7-4 turns into 7-10 very quickly. And now there are a lot of question marks that need to be answered about this New York Jets football team, which is kind of what I want to go through today, and the questions that we need to find answers to this offseason. The first one that jumps out, and it's not in any kind of chronological order. I kind of just did it in order of importance, in my opinion. Who's the quarterback? It's a question we've asked many, many, many times as a Jet fan. Who is your quarterback? Because going into 2023, I don't personally believe that you can run back Zach Wilson and Mike White and be satisfied there. I think you need to bring in a veteran. Who that veteran is, we'll spend a lot of time this offseason discussing. Off the top of my head, I will list off a few potential options, whether it be Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Gardner Minshew, Lamar Jackson, Ryan Tannehill, Daniel Jones, Geno Smith. People have brought up Sam Darnold. I don't know why, but they have. And add a list and multiple options. Some are better than others. Some you have to trade for. Others are going to cost high. Others are not going to cost very much. But the moral of the story is, who is going to be the quarterback for the New York Jets next year is the biggest one that I think the New York Jets have to answer. And if I was a betting man, which I am, I think the most likely, now, keep in mind, I want to preface this because I know how the commenters work. They react sometimes without hearing the full thing. This is not my preferred plan. This is saying what I think is actually going to happen. And if I had to bet, I believe the opening day starter for the New York Jets in 2023 is going to be Jimmy Garoppolo. Makes too much sense. You have two guys in Robert Saleh and Mike LaFleur who come from San Francisco, which is where Jimmy was. And Jimmy had a lot of success with Mike LaFleur as his passing game coordinator. They've worked very, very closely together. If they have that playoff mandate, or if the expectation is you got to make the playoffs in 2023, who do you think Robert Saleh and Mike LaFleur, assuming Mike LaFleur's here, because that is something that we're going to get into next, kind of in answering some of these questions. But I think if he hasn't been fired yet as of recording this on Tuesday evening before a Wednesday release, I don't necessarily know if that's going to end up happening. they're going to say we can do it. We could do it with Jimmy G. We've done it before with Jimmy G. In 2019, they made the Super Bowl with Jimmy G. And again, I'm not saying that's my preference, but that's how these coaches think. When they're going to be put on the spot and saying there's a lot of pressure, they're going to want to go to what's familiar and what's comfortable with them. And that worked. So would a quarterback room of Jimmy G, Mike White, and Zach Wilson next year surprise you? It wouldn't surprise me at all. As I said, I think that's probably most likely. Would I like Derek Carr? I would. I think he's better than Jimmy Garoppolo. I think that would be better. Would Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady or Lamar Jackson be splashier? Hell yeah, that would be splashier. And I'm not opposed to either of those options necessarily either. Lamar Jackson's probably the highest ceiling one because of his age and just he's an MVP candidate, or he won the MVP really in 2019. The issue there is what are you going to have to give up to get him? How much are you going to have to pay him? And all that stuff that goes on top of that. He's missed a little bit of time the last 2 years. That's the biggest thing there. Is it worth the risk? I would lean yes, but again, none of these options are a perfect solution for Joe Douglas and the New York Jets. That's why I'm glad that I'm not in Joe Douglas's shoes. I'm not the one who has to make that decision. But they have to figure the hell out who is quarterbacking this team in 2023. What is your plan at quarterback when you have such an important season where you need to take that next step? Yes, you went from 2 to 4 to 7 wins. That's great. You got to win 10 or 11 and be a playoff team next year. That's really not asking too much. Then I kind of hinted at it, but who's calling plays? And the next two are actually kind of together, which who is calling plays and which veteran are you adding to the staff? Because if you listen to Robert Saleh's press conference at the end of the season, he made it seem pretty clear that they're going to look to add a veteran. Now, we obviously know what happened with Knapp before the 2021 season. He tragically passes away in an accident. The distracted driver hits him when he's on his bike, I believe, which is just awful, terrible. And in the interim, they end up bringing in Beck, who was Zach Wilson's personal quarterback coach, and then they didn't bring back Beck. And they never replaced Knapp in 2021, which I understand. But in going into this year in 2022, it was pretty much Mike LaFleur and Rob Calabrese. This is on you to figure out. And it didn't work. And is it Zach Wilson? Is it those two guys? Is it a mix of both? Probably is a little bit, has to do with everything, all of those different circumstances, right? But what are they going to do? Are you going to bring in a Gary Kubiak, which is a name that's been brought up a ton, to be some sort of assistant? Now, I don't think you're hiring Gary Kubiak and he's going to say, I'm going to be a coordinator and call plays every week. I don't think that's likely, but as some sort of senior advisor who's there and just in it and could show LaFleur the ropes and help whoever's starting at quarterback and help White and help Wilson if he's here, or if you draft a developmental quarterback in the middle rounds in this year's draft. That makes sense. I mean, I did a video at the end of the year of other guys who you could potentially add, veterans who have experience as either head coach or a longtime quarterback coach or a longtime offensive coordinator. Dirk Cutter, Ken Wisenhunt, Mark Trestman. Those are just a few. That Frank Reich is one who's going to get brought up a lot, but if he's not hired as a head coach, I think he's going to get hired as a coordinator, and I don't necessarily know if I see the Jets moving on from LaFleur to give Reich that job. Maybe they do. I don't think that would necessarily be a bad thing. I think Reich's had a ton of success as a coordinator and even as a head coach, getting a lot out of different offenses with a bunch of different quarterbacks. But I would put that as a pretty slim likelihood. But someone like Gary Kubiak makes a lot of sense. Someone like Dirk Cutter, who worked with Jameis Winston and actually got a lot out of Jameis Winston. Was that a perfect marriage? Did they ever end up developing Winston into a franchise guy? No, but they got a ton of yards and a ton of passing touchdowns out of a turnover machine there. So who is calling plays? Is it going to be Mike LaFleur? And if it is Mike LaFleur, which veteran are you adding? Because again, it can't be just run it back with just those two young guys as who's leading the way in the offense. They need a veteran voice in there. Who that is, Salah's got to find him. And he hinted at it, and I think it's something that they do this offseason. And the final question before I really get into, I'm going to play the clip and talk about it. It has to do with Zach Wilson, Mike LaFleur. But the final question is Quinnen Williams. Now, Joe Douglas didn't give away too much. and some people that scared some people off. Not me personally, because I know that he's going into negotiations. He spoke and said that he wants to make Jamal Adams a Jet for life just to trade him. I don't think he's going to make that same mistake again and say something that he probably shouldn't. I do think Quinnen Williams gets an extension. I'm really not worried about it. Someone who had a monster year 4, he gets after the quarterback. He's important to this defense. He's a young building block player, a leader on this team. It's different than Jamal. It's different than Leonard Williams. It's different than Sam Darnold. Those are the 3 that people talk that people bring up, and they say, well, those are Maccagnan guys that Douglas didn't want and traded. And then they say, oh, well, Quinnen Williams is another Maccagnan guy. Is he gonna not sign him because that's not his own guy? A little bit different, because we've seen him have the success with Robert Saleh. The Jets were going nowhere, and they had Leonard and Quinnen Williams. And Joe Douglas said, why am I going to pay Leonard Williams a boatload of money, which is ended up what Dave Gettleman ended up doing and the Giants ended up doing, when I could trade him because I have Quinnen and we're not going anywhere. So that was a smart move. Darnold, we know what happened there. And Jamal didn't want to be here and was asking for an insane amount of money. So I think it ended up working out in that sense. And I think it works out with Quinnen. He's probably going to get $20 million a year, if not maybe more than that. 5 years, $100 million, something like that. Maybe it's more. Maybe it's $22 million a year. And then you're looking at, what is that, $110 million over 5 years? He's going to get a mega deal, and he deserves it. He absolutely deserves it. And I'm not worried. As I said, I'm not really worried about that. I'm really not. Let's get into the Zach Wilson and Mike LaFleur story that I want to talk about. So it's a clip from ESPN Radio, the Michael Kay Show. It's Steve Young, who obviously is very close with Zach Wilson. They both went to BYU. And shout out to Boy Green 25, Paul Andrew Eston Jr., Boy Green on Twitter. We've had him on our show multiple times on this channel. He has his own content. Make sure to follow him. He does really good stuff. He clipped it and put it on Twitter, but this is from my audio from the Michael Kay Show on ESPN Radio, talking about Mike LaFleur and Zach Wilson's relationship, along with the idea of adding Cliff Kingsbury, which I'll talk about after.
I think Mike LaFleur is gone. If you're going to bring back Zach Wilson, you can't have the same coaching around him. If they do decide to let Mike go, Steve, who do you think should be the next offensive coordinator and could maybe fix Wilson?
Okay.
Is Kingsbury a guy?
Yeah, okay, hold on. Wait, let's go backwards. Because remember, we have to mourn the passing of Greg Knapp, who got run over by a distracted driver, which was part of the solution that was part of how he was getting drafted, and how I'm sorry about that. Mike and Zach needs somebody who's not I know he doesn't need tough love. He doesn't need somebody like see how tough he needs someone to he needs a big brother and a young knowledgeable, innovative, someone who can trust and says to him, you know what, despite everything that's happened, Zach, I believe in you. You can get this done. Zach needs that. And Mike kind of kept him at arm's length and gave him the tough love aspect, and I just don't think it's really useful for Zach. If he stays, they've got to fix that. They've got to fix that. That's not working, and it's a broken relationship. It's a relationship that needs mending, and that's on both of them. If they do let him go, I would say that Cliff Kingsbury, yeah, I like that idea. I like that. I need somebody who's going to because Zach's problems are not physical. Zach's problems are expectations and how he deals with expectations, and that comes from every direction and all the things that come with playing and playing great football. And he's got to figure out a way to process all the expectations so it doesn't affect his play. And that's a process that's going to go on. I don't think it's not hard. Not hard. It's not long suffering. It just needs to find. It's growing up. It's maturing. It's figuring out how to deal with the stuff's in front of you.
Okay, that's the quote. And thank you again. Shout out to Boy Green on Twitter, as well as the Michael Kay Show on ESPN Radio here in New York. I don't really like that answer. And I'm not saying that Steve isn't right to have that opinion. That's not really where I'm going. But to me, this says that Zach Wilson was going to Steve Young to complain about how Mike LaFleur was treating him. Right? That's how I think it. Like, how the hell else does Steve Young rather, find out that Zach Wilson is being kept at an arm's length? I think that's firsthand from Zach, right? Hello, connect the dots. BYU, close relationship. That's how he's going to find out. And I don't like that. And now, to Zach's credit, I think he did get better with the media. And I thought his answers after the season was over to the media was great. I know the internet ran wild with it, with the quote where it was like, if they bring in a veteran, I'm going to make that guy's life hell if I'm here. What other answer do you want from him? Do you want him to come out and say, hello, yes, my name is Zach Wilson. I suck. It's over. Like, no, he's not going to say that. The best thing you can say is, I'm going to compete with him every day. I want to prove to the coaches that I belong here and that I should be the starter. That's essentially what he did. It was perfect. But in this instance, it sounds like that Zach was going to Steve Young and saying that I don't like how my OC is treating me. And that rubs me the wrong way. And Cliff, God, look, hand up. I was wrong about Cliff. Two guys I was very wrong about that I thought would be good. Cliff Kingsbury, Matt Rule. Those were two guys that I liked a lot, had success in college. Cliff Kingsbury with Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech, and then Matt Rule taking over Baylor, bringing them back to life. Temple, bringing them back to life. All those things, right? I liked both of them, but God, Cliff Kingsbury had Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, James Conner, Zach Ertz, AJ Green, so many other wide receivers that they've picked over the years. And they still couldn't figure it out offensively. They couldn't do it. And they give him a mega extension in the past offseason and then pull the plug on him. Kingsbury, no. Sorry. If this was 2018, Matt, totally different story. 2018 or 2019, whatever the hell it was. And I was really big on those guys. No, I don't. I hope it's not Cliff Kingsbury, because I don't know if that is the voice that you want. Because I don't think he had the success at the NFL level like some of the other coaches that I listed off earlier had as a head coach and a coordinator. So if they were to fire Mike LaFleur, I hope it's not because they want to bring in Cliff Kingsbury, because I don't know if that is the right alternative there. Anyway, let's hop into your voicemails now and see what you guys think about the close of the season. All right, first up, we're going to go out to Max calling in from New Jersey. He wants to talk about Jets season recap, off-season plans, and is this the worst collapse ever?
Hi, this is Max. I'm home in New Jersey, and here's my recap of the Jets season. This is the biggest collapse the Jets ever had. I think on NFL Film's top 10 list, they had the 2000 Jets and the 2008 as the two biggest collapses. I think that this year's Jets team had the biggest collapse of all of them. They started the season 7-4, and they lost the last 6 games. But today, I mean, we played good on defense, but we allowed Jason Sanders a 50-yard field goal. And I swear, like, when we were doing the game-winning drive, there was 2 passes to Garrett Wilson, and it was like, why did the refs not call pass interference? I literally saw a Miami Dolphins player holding Garrett Wilson, and they didn't call pass interference. The refs are so biased against the Jets, but the refs are just total biased. So here's my thoughts that we should do this offseason. Jets need to sign a quarterback badly. Zach Wilson is horrible. He can't make a screen pass. He can't even do a screen pass, which is something even like high school quarterbacks can do. But I was thinking for quarterbacks, I want Lamar Jackson, but I think it's very unlikely. So I want the Jets to sign Jimmy Garoppolo. Okay. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a great game manager, and I'm not saying Derek Carr is bad. I think Derek Carr is a good option. I just think Garoppolo has experience in the system and we don't need to get a quarterback that's never played in the system. Garoppolo has played under Kyle Shanahan, and this offense is based off Kyle Shanahan's offense, so we should get Jimmy Garoppolo. I think the Jets should also get more linebackers and a safety in the draft because we haven't had a good safety since Jamal Adams. I think we should get, I don't know, like any good safety prospects. I haven't like looked up the draft much, but I would definitely would like getting safety prospects and linebackers who are like better like at tackling. And I also hope this offseason we do not fire either Joe Douglas or Saleh. I heard reports that Woody Johnson might fire Robert Saleh or Joe Douglas after the season. I think it would be a big mistake if Woody Johnson fires Robert Saleh. I think, and I understand, like, Saleh is not the greatest coach. I mean, no coach is perfect, but what Saleh has done in 2 years is he turned the Jets program around, and I do not want Woody Johnson to fire Saleh because like, what are the head coaching candidates? I mean, I'll be okay if they fire Saleh if we can get into like Sean Payton or something, who's like won like a Super Bowl with the Saints and they turn the Saints around. Like, I would be okay if we had Sean Payton, but if we're trying to fire Saleh with other coaching candidates like Shane Steichen, like that's the only other coaching candidate I want besides Sean Payton. And
all right, Max ran out of time there. His 3 minutes hit, but there was a lot in there. I don't know if I would call it the worst collapse. I think 2008 was worse. They were 8-3, and I think they were the 1 seed at that point. Now I know 7-4 to 7-10 is terrible. There's no denying that. I would put that, like as I said, I'd put that pretty high up on the list. 2000, they were 9-4 and then lost the last 3 to the Raiders, the Lions, and the Ravens. That was pretty bad also. For some of the old heads, ask Green Bean. Sorry, I know I just threw him way under the bus. But 1986, they started, 10-1? Yeah, they started 10-1 and then finished the season 10-6. They did make the playoffs and win a playoff game, so I don't know if that's necessarily qualifies as a collapse. It was bad. I mean, I guess we're splitting hairs there, but it's there's no debate that it was very, very bad what happened there. I agree with you. I don't think they're going to change head coach or GM, nor should they. And it's a different story if a year from now we're talking about another 7-10 season. At that point, completely, again, different conversation. I don't think that's where the Jets are going to be. I think they do take that step forward, but not worth having that conversation at this moment. And I said it in my open, and I think Jimmy G is probably a likely choice based on the success that he had in San Francisco and his familiarity with both Robert Saleh and Mike LaFleur, who was his pass game coordinator there. Do I love it? I don't know if I necessarily go as far and say that I love it. I think it makes sense. I think he'd be okay, but you better have a good backup, or you better hope Zach Wilson takes that leap. Because if he needs to come in and play, which unfortunately is likely with Jimmy Garoppolo, not great. Steven from Virginia is next. He wants to talk about LaFleur. Let's do it.
Matt, Steven out of Virginia. Man, once again, a laughing stock of a team. Mike LaFleur has to go, man. Sorry. He failed his franchise quarterback. Can't scheme 1 touchdown open. Just a joke.
Yeah. No touchdowns in the last 3 weeks is pretty damning. I know what they were dealing with. I understand that. But they limped to the finish line. Limped. 3, 6, and 6 points in your final 3 games. It's not good enough. No matter how you slice it, it isn't good enough. And that's why I think that at an absolute minimum, they're going to add a veteran offensive mind to help this along. Because there's some things that LaFleur does that I really like, but it's hard not to be critical with some of these other issues. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And that was a short and sweet one, Steven. I get it. You're not alone in that sentiment. A lot of people think that that way. A lot of people do. And it makes sense with just how bad they limp to the finish line. It's unfortunate. Constantine from Florida is up next. He says, what does he want to get into? Optimism for 2023? Okay, I like this. Let's go.
Hey, Matty, it's Constantine from Florida.
What's up, dude?
I just got to say, Matt, I really appreciate you, bro.
Thank you.
mean, you've made this Jets season unbelievably fun for me. The fact that I could call in, praise when I can, vent when I can, and it's all because of you. People out there, Jets Nation, we need to lobby for this guy to either get syndicated or picked up by a football network, because this guy is real. Now, going to the Jets season, not exactly the way I wanted them to finish, but I'm going to tell you what. I heard all the calls last week. That's why I didn't call. I'm very optimistic about this team. You got to be. If you're a true Jet fan, you're going to believe that they're going to get the right quarterback, which in my opinion, Derek Carr will come in and make this offense hum, and that'll motivate the defense to play a lot harder and a lot longer. So when you have a defense that's out there during the entire duration of the game, and you don't have an offense that can complement that defense, that's what happens. So I'm very optimistic about next year. Suffice to say, I think that with Breece Hall, God willing, his injury, he heals well, and he runs the way he did before he got injured, and the way Garrett Wilson is just turning into an absolute wide receiver of a beast, oh, man, we're definitely going to be something to be feared in the NFL. There's no doubt about that. I believe that in my heart. Now, I want to say one thing.
Please.
To those idiots out there that want to send out toxic messages to players and families, I'm going to leave you with a thought. What if that Monday night game the Jets were playing, and what if the player that was on that field, that basically died on that field, what if it wasn't Damar Hamlin? What if it was Sauce Gardner? Take a minute, reflect, and think about that. Because that's what these players put on the line. Show some damn respect. If you can't show respect, don't call yourself a Jet fan. Don't give me a bad name. I've been a Jet fan for 53 years, put up with all the shit you could possibly imagine. But I've never, ever, ever done anything stupid like that. So whoever did that, get a life. And as far as the Jets go, one last time, and you'll be hearing plenty from me next year. J-E-T-S, Jets, 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 let's go. Love you, Matt.
Thank you, man. Constantine, hope to continue to hear from you in the offseason, all you guys. This show's not going anywhere. Now, normally, in years gone by in the offseason, I'd switch back to having the Monday release. But I think I'm going to stick with the Wednesdays throughout the offseason as well. It was kind of just easier when I was working the other jobs, and then like Sunday was usually an off day, and I record Sunday evening and have it ready for Monday, and then couldn't really do that during the season because they were playing on Sunday, so then I'd switch to a midweek show. I kind of like Wednesday, middle of the week, so I think I'm going to stick with that for this program, reworking some things with scheduling. I'm working on a little bit of a bigger project right now, so I didn't do any of the live streams during the week in the Jet Reports, which was Monday to Thursday at 2. But I'm reworking some things. If you have suggestions or thoughts, I'm open to it. I'm not saying that I could do every single thing that you guys would like to see or hear. It's just, unfortunately, there's just not enough hours in the day. But if a lot of people are saying, hey, we want to see this, then, that's something that I would consider doing if there's an interest or a demand for it. But a few things here from Constantine that are important. I like the optimistic lens that you go into, and I appreciate the kind words from you as always, my friend. I like Carr. I think he'd be really, really good in this system as well. But I focus on the last bit, and I know it's something I talked about a few weeks ago when this was a bigger story with the drama with the toxic Zach Wilson's mom calling the Jet fans toxic and stuff like that. But I really appreciate you bringing up the point with Damar Hamlin, and thank God he's out of the hospital. What a story that was, and just he really captivated the sports world. Unfortunately, with that injury on the field, that was awful, terrible, terrible, terrible to see. But what came out of it, I think you could take a positive of just how many people rallied around him. And, it really brought attention to some of the things that are a little bit more important about this game of football that we all love, and player safety, and what these, like you say, what these guys put on the line every week. And I'm not saying that you have to be, I don't think Constantine is saying this either, that you have to be, just a fanboy and that everyone's great and this and that. But it's one thing to, and this is what I said then too, it's one thing to be critical and say like, hey, Zach Wilson, man, it's not clicking. I think they have to move on. I don't think he's the answer. That's one thing. It's another thing when you're screaming at the kid to kill himself on all these other drastic, terrible, terrible, terrible things that were said to him. It's not right. It's not. And like you said, imagine if Damar Hamlin was someone on our team. How would you feel? Or even worse, what if you were in that spot and you were the one sending those messages? I can't even put myself in that situation. It's never dawned on me to send a hate message to someone on social media like that. And then that guy's hurt and that guy's lying on the field. It's not right. You should be able to separate the human side of it and the sports side of it. And I was glad that a lot of Jet fans were able to support Damar Hamlin's charity and really help him out, because you know what? He's a good guy. That's what I found out about Damar Hamlin throughout this. He's a stand-up human being, and it makes me happy that people were able to raise money for his charity, and maybe people will take a second thought into not sending that message. So thank you, Constantine, for bringing that to light, because I agree with you. Vinny from Peekskill wants to talk about LaFleur not being able to adapt and overcome injuries.
Greetings, fools! It is I, Skeletor!
Oh, God.
Future ruler of Eternia and morbidly depressed Jets fan! God, I have not seen such incompetence since that flea-bag beastman failed to bring back my dry cleaning! All right, that's enough of that.
Jesus.
All right, there you go. There's that promise. But the real reason why the Jets lost this game, Mike LaFleur cannot adapt to the personnel he's stuck with. Look, the plays he was running, would be fine if you had a healthy offensive line and you had Breece Hall and you had this and that and so on. When the injuries piled up, you have to adapt. Teams do it all the time in the NFL. They get hurt. They lose key players, but they find a way to adapt and overcome. And he simply was not able to adjust. He's still trying to call the same exact plays as if everything is fine. And it's just not. They're really going to need to work on this offense in the offseason. I mean, we already know quarterback, offensive line, bring in a veteran offensive mind to work alongside him, or just plain out fire him and replace him. Whatever you do, you need to do something, because we cannot run it back with just him there in charge of the offense. That's all. And that's all. And go Jets.
Oh, I thought you were going to do it in the voice. Vinny, so if you don't know why he was doing that voice, in the pregame show, he sent in a super chat and was like, hey, you guys decide who you want to hear. And he gave a couple of options. So I picked Skeletor. Thank you, Vinny from Peekskill. Make me laugh as always. And the injuries was such a big thing for LaFleur, and him not being able to adapt from that point, because people don't want to hear it, but it's true. The offense before Breece and AVT went down versus after was drastically different. And I think most people saw it coming. AVT was the MVP, where we're playing left tackle, right guard, and playing it at a high level. And Breece Hall was on his way to win the Offensive Rookie of the Year before he got hurt 7 games into his season. It stinks. I think things would have been a lot different for this team. Offensively, I think they could have survived the bad quarterback play, but the line went to hell, the run game went to hell, and everything else went to hell after that. And I think, we talked about it on this episode a ton, but you got to get some sort of veteran in here to go along with LaFleur. Nick from New Jersey is going to close us out here. He is the final call. He wants to talk about potentially trading picks and going after Lamar. I'm interested.
Yo, Matt O'Leary, what's going on? Nick from New Jersey. Haven't called in a long time. Just want to say what's up. Not the greatest end of the season, I know. And it looks like we're going to have to be looking into quarterbacks. But I just want to get into a trade scenario. And if you think this is reasonable, maybe you can fix this into something better, more reasonable if you don't like it, or if you say it's reasonable, or if you propose something, a different kind of trade. Well, this is what I'm thinking, because we have several players we don't need that are considered number one talents that we can trade that are enticing to other teams, right? So they could be intrigued with maybe Corey Davis, Carl Lawson. Maybe we trade Elijah Moore and we package up a few picks in there. I know we need our picks this year, but maybe we could trade next year first and then this year second or third. I don't know how much. I'm sure it's going to be a boatload for Lamar Jackson. I'm sorry if I didn't say that. But it's going to be a lot this year and a lot next year. I know that. So that's why I'm saying the first round, a second round this year, maybe a fourth rounder, and a third next year. So you let me know what you think of that if we trade those three players for including those picks. So let's see where we're at. And hopefully we can get Lamar Jackson, some other quarterback in here to either help Wilson or take this team to the next level. And let's go Jets, and let's try to make the playoffs next year. Bye.
Love it. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. I think that's got to be the mindset. Let's make the playoffs next year. I think of the guys you listed off, I don't think Corey Davis and Carl Lawson are going to really fetch you a whole lot in a trade because of their contract situation. Elijah Moore is interesting. I think that is probably one of the more tradable guys. Lamar, I think is probably your best option at quarterback for this team. I know people are going to say Rodgers, Jimmy G, Derek Carr, Lamar, and go right down the line. I don't think it's super likely because Baltimore is so well run. I don't see them letting a guy who's, a borderline top 10 quarterback to just become available. What makes that situation of acquiring Lamar Jackson difficult for the Jets is because you have to give up a ton of draft assets to get him. Then you have to extend him, give him a ton of guaranteed money, and that's going to, preclude you from signing some other guys. Right, and addressing your team in other areas. You have to decide internally, is it worth it at that point to do it? To say, all right, we're going to go for our guy. This is who we believe he's a franchise quarterback. We're going to pay him. We're going to trade for him, and we'll figure out the rest out. It's bold. It would be a big swing. I wouldn't hate it. I wouldn't at all. I don't think Lamar gets a lot of criticism. I think some of it's unfair. I think he's a better passer than some people give him credit for. Is he my favorite quarterback in the league? No, but I don't think he is nearly as bad as what some people make him out to be. I think he's good. I think he's a damn good player. It would be a significant upgrade. And his age, too. He's 26. So even if his career does end early, like some people say that, running quarterbacks, they don't last. If that's the case, then you still probably have another 5 or 6 years with him until he's 31, 32. But I don't even know if that's necessarily fair to say. He's a dynamic player. Anyway, that's going to do it for me on this episode. Please make sure to subscribe to the Just Jets podcast wherever it is that you get your show, whether it be on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever. Leave a review, a comment, share with a friend. All the little stuff really matters a lot. And I know you guys are probably tired of hearing from it with the creators saying, leave a like or subscribe and all this stuff. But it matters to the algorithm. It gets us in front of more people. It allows us to do different things on the channel and on the podcast. So I appreciate you guys supporting. Reminder that you can follow on social media. I'm Matt O'Leary NY. Podcast has its own socials as well, Just Jets Pod. And it's going to be a big offseason, and I'm not going anywhere. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Matt, and I will talk to you next time.